Arc Raiders just wrapped up one of its biggest community pushes yet. We're also going to check up into some new details around Phase 2, and some recent developer comments that give additional context to a few other things. On top of that, we do have some brand new community updates, as well as a whole bunch more. What's up, World Utopia here, back in with another video. Today we're checking out all things Arc Raiders. Okay, so first off here, we're going to check out the new Phase 2 information, which actually does lead us onto an article that they did just recently drop. Where first off, they do want to break down some of the community event stuff that just happened, where this portion actually does pertain to Phase 1 of the community event, where they have some really cool stat breakdown here, like 25 million visits happened to Stellamontis. There was one player that donated 24,000 resources. 2.2 million raiders have been knocked down by the Shredder. 37,000 raiders downed themselves with deadline mines. There's been over 26,000 matriarchs eliminated, and somehow 117 raiders downed themselves with a volcanic rock, but they're not sure how that did happen. So a pretty cool stat breakdown here, and pretty insane that one raider donated 24,000 resources. That is quite a lot to commit with that. But of course, with that, we do get Phase 2 of the community event, which they're calling Staking Our Claim. Now, the first Phase 1 was considered breaking new ground, just to get some clarity there in reference to the Phase 1 name. But they do mention it has already begun, so Phase 2 is already out. And they do say that during this event, you'll be rewarded with new merits, and that's for visiting any topside map. So this one is not just locked down to Stellamontis anymore. And these merits are awarded based on the XP earned, and will accumulate to unlock weapons, gadgets, cosmetics, and tokens for your raiders. Now, it does look like it is essentially around the same event section here with the 24 rewards. So all those items can now be earned just via XP and visiting any topside map, so they kind of unlocked it to be a little bit easier here. But these do essentially have the same rewards as the breaking new ground, but now there is XP tied to that where you will earn merits on top of that. They do also mention this event is still running for the next 18 days or till December 8th. They don't give a specific time here, but normally their updates are around 3 to 5 a.m. Eastern time. So I do believe that's when the cutoff will be, since it's around the same time their updates come out. Again, hopefully they do give us some further intel on that though. Although I imagine on the last day, instead of it saying it's going to end in a day, it's going to give the hour count, but not for sure there, of course. Now, there actually was some dev and community lead comments on this that do give a little bit more context here. So, of course, with this update, they actually did add some new items. Now, that was the Aphelion rifle, as well as a few other like the Deadline Mine. However, it does seem like this rifle has been a very big chase item, and even people in the Discord saying, did they never add the Aphelion rifle to the game? Well, the community lead did actually add some context here, where Embark Ocean does go on to say that it's definitely in the game. So they did basically confirm that it is in the game right now, and it does seem like it is incredibly rare though, but at least has been somewhat potentially confirmed here. Now, since we're already on Embark Ocean's comments, I figured I would cover this section as well, where she does actually give a little bit more context on what's going on with the game and a few things you might see in the future. Now, the first one actually does pertain to a Discord comment here saying, are you aware that the Venator is outperforming all pink weapons in TTK as a cheap blue gun? And she does actually comment on here saying yep. So somewhat of a nothing burger, but the team is aware that the weapon is highly outperforming a lot of other guns in the game. So I'm assuming, or at least I think we can assume, that we'll eventually see a Venator nerf, as I'm sure they'll want to kind of mix around the meta. They do that quite a bit in the finals, where they constantly are changing the meta with every season. So putting 2 and 2 together there, I would assume that we're more than likely going to eventually see a Venator nerf. Maybe later than sooner, maybe even after the expedition phase, which is when I presume we'll get the next kind of overall balance patch. They probably want to gather the next data until the next Raider deck / expedition project, which do happen every 8 weeks or 2 months. So if there is meta balancing every 8 weeks or 2 months in that time frame, then I would say that's fairly reasonable to keep things the exact same. But I wouldn't be all too surprised if the Venator does get nerfed. Another comment here actually does pertain to the Locked Gate event on Blue Gate. As someone mentioned here, they saw it a single time in rotation on the first day, but never since. And it looks like after Embark Ocean's comments here saying, I don't have an ETA at the moment, that they actually did go ahead and turn off that for the rotations. This actually did already happen with the Queen or Harvester event. That one actually did get turned off when people were using the Trailblazer grenade mine to essentially kind of one-shot the Queen. where it does look like they actually have fixed that, so they turned that event back on. It also seems like, I don't know if it's just me, but I've noticed that Hidden Bunker hasn't appeared as much recently. And I noticed near the end of Trials, Hidden Bunker was supposed to pop up, or at least given the event times online, it was supposed to pop up around 10 p.m. my time. And Hidden Bunker never showed up, so I was never actually able to farm Bastions. I'm wondering if they were looking into that as people were farming Bastions in Hidden Bunker, essentially for those trials as they were constantly respawning. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. It does seem like they're constantly either retuning the times there, or they're kind of constantly changing. It's also really hard to find these event times. Even Metaforge doesn't have the correct times for all the events. And I've noticed several websites that did have the times from ServerSlam, or even now, those have constantly been changing. I really wish they would just document out when events are going to happen. They did with the ServerSlam, they put out a nice infograph, and I honestly wish they would just do this again for full release and when the new events do come out. That way people can plan and schedule their day around these. As if you only get a few, like in the case of Hidden Bunker, like 1 to 3 times per day, that does make it really hard for players to kind of find out and when they should actually farm their trials. But yeah, hoping we get a bit more clarity there pertaining to that one. Moving on here, and next up, we do actually have one more official update here, at least from Embark themselves, where they actually did recently put out a Steam community survey. And this actually does pertain specifically to Arc Raiders here. So over on their community page and their Arc Raiders event page, they do have a link to this survey that you can take, where they're gathering insight on gameplay, preferences, and what makes Arc Raiders truly stand out to you. The survey will be closed November 24th at 11 p.m. CET or 2 p.m. PST, so you do only have the next few days to actually fill this one out. I'll try to constantly link it depending on how many videos I put out here, but yeah, it's going to be in my description, so the link to the survey itself and the community post, you can check both those out if you wanted to do so. Speaking on that though, and some other official updates, we of course recently did have the TGA nominees. Now, Embark and the TGAs have been all too familiar. In fact, in 2023, the finals actually got shadow dropped at TGA. Well, really cool here, Embark actually did get their first ever nomination, and that happened to be with Arc Raiders. So Arc Raiders has been nominated for Best Multiplayer Game. You can currently vote on the Game Awards website. Now, TGA is around December 11th, so you should vote sometime soon here. I also will preface and say that the voting actually only makes up 10% of the actual outcome. It still does matter though, so you should go vote, especially for Embark. They definitely deserve this one. And when we do compare the other games in the category, they for sure do deserve Best Multiplayer. I'm honestly surprised they didn't get nominated for anything else other than multiplayer, especially when Battlefield 6 and a few other games did make it to the list for nominations. But at least they got on there with one. It is unfortunate that they didn't get there for any others, as I honestly do think they deserve to be nominated for several awards here. But in any case, we can at least get them the multiplayer win, which is a pretty massive W in and of itself. Overall, that should about cover today's video. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe, and to the next one. Deuces.